start, and the first question will go to Chuck DeVore. I want to start with the question about health care, the passage of the health care bill. Do you want to change it or stop it, or how would you do that, and how would you get your views through in the U.S. Senate?
It's a great question. It's about health care. I signed on to the pledge to repeal it over 4 months ago. Charlie Fiorina, who Tom Campbell and I get the opportunity to speak for tonight on a few occasions, she signed on to the pledge to repeal it the day after it passed. I believe you'll hear from Mr. Campbell that he would support constitutional challenges to it. I believe that this measure is profoundly unconstitutional. There is nowhere in the Constitution where it says that your federal government can order you to buy a product on the private market. There is also, still in the Constitution, a prohibition against a capitation or direct tax that was made an exception for with the 16th Amendment only with regards to income. And the thing about this health care bill is that if you don't buy the government's health care, you have a set tax. Everybody has the same set tax. It's not based on income, therefore it is a capitation, therefore it is illegal and unconstitutional. So we need to throw it out, and we need to start over and actually have reform, not a government takeover. One last point about our missing member tonight. She was asked in October at the Web 2.0 conference, when she was in the exploratory phase of her campaign, what she thought of Obamacare. And she says, well, I don't know, I haven't read the bill. And then she proceeded for 4 more times to say that she supported the goals of President Obama's health care initiative. Ladies and gentlemen, I was never willing to even give the president that benefit of the doubt, because I knew what his goals were. And they weren't health care reform, they were government takeover of 1/6 of our economy.
Yes.
I always learn something from Chuck, and I did again tonight. I think it's time for us to show our constitutions.
Oh.
The requirement that my wife and I have to buy insurance, that the federal government tells us what's in it, is profoundly upsetting to me as a matter of liberty. And if we choose something more generous, we have to pay 40% excise tax on the value above what the minimum is. In both respects, having to pay a fine if we don't have what the federal government tells us, and paying an excise tax if we have too much, my liberty and my wife's liberty is taken away from us. As to the Constitution, I do share Assemblyman DeVore's serious, most grave concerns about the constitutionality of the mandate. And I seldom get the opportunity, so please forgive me, but the Migratory Fowl Act is so important and interesting. Let me spend another hour on this. Supreme Court of the United States held in the following case. True story. It'll tell you exactly why we've got a real good case here. The Supreme Court of the United States held a gravel pit company south of Chicago. Rain came in, water was diverted, geese landed on the pond. They decided to pump the water out and make it a landfill. Oh no, says EPA, and it is now a waterfowl refuge. And the Army Corps of Engineers said, you can't do this without our permission. True case, went up to the Supreme Court of the United States, and the Supreme Court of the United States said, I know fowl crossing international lines is interstate commerce. I've got 10 seconds left, so pardon me if I go a little bit over. I'll promise to take it off the rest of my time tonight. The Supreme Court of the United States said, you can prevent somebody from interfering with the geese, but you can't make somebody create something for the geese. Here, the Democrats' argument is, you can be forced to do something to help interstate commerce. I think it hurts it, but they say helps it. But the Supreme Court told us you can't. That's why we're going to win on that one.
Good.
Okay, Okay, charge me.
You each have a minute of rebuttal, so I'll give you a minute and 25.
That's fine.
Well, charging us, of course, is what's gotten us into this problem.
No, spending is what got us into it.
All right,
So
just
don't
wanted to
spend
make
it.
sure that you weren't advocating deficit spending with the charging.
Well, let's see how frugal you are with the 25 extra seconds.
25 off of you. This is a hugely important issue, and one of the reasons why I'm glad it was the very first question asked is it highlights, I think, a couple of very key distinctions between these three people who would seek your vote. I was very much leaning forward in the foxhole, as we say in the Army, when I pledged to repeal Obamacare 4 months ago. Carly Fiorina pledged to repeal it the day after it passed. We generated tens of thousands of responses up on Capitol Hill trying to persuade lawmakers not to pass it. You know where I stand.
We're now reaching the 35 seconds out of your 1 minute of rebuttal, so go ahead.
Well, so a little bit more on the migratory. It's really important for conservatives, we Republicans, to be for something as well, and so let the record be clear. People who have pre-existing conditions and people who are too poor to afford their own health care insurance should be helped. And there's a way to do that very modestly and effectively within the confines of existing law, unless your goal is really to create a federal monstrosity.
I didn't think you'd be laughing so much at the debate tonight, did you? All right, second question, and Tom Campbell will be first on this one. I'd like to ask you about earmark spending. It's very popular. People who are elected to office seem to think they have to bring all this money home. What is your philosophy about earmark spending in Cork?
I issued a pledge, and it was one which I modeled after Senator John McCain's, that if God willing I become the United States Senator, I will not seek to put in earmarks. The practice of having a member of Congress or a senator who is powerful adjust an appropriation bill because of their influence and have something come in that wasn't appropriated, wasn't approved by the individual agencies. And of course the argument that we heard from Senator Boxer is, then California might not be well represented. I disagree. I think California is best represented when the national economy is allowed to flourish and when the size of that economy taken from the private sector by the federal government is minimized. And that is worth doing. And you're not going to accomplish anything unless you lead by example. So that's why I made the statement that I did. In my 9 years in Congress, it was frequently my privilege to appear before the Appropriations Committee and to argue on behalf of projects in the Bay Area. The funds would otherwise go to Texas or some other part. And that was the appropriations process, and I think that was what I should do. And from time to time, the individual appropriations that I supported were included in the bill, and from time to time they weren't. What I never did was the earmark, which is to go outside of that process and add it in at the end. You see this in Congress with sometimes projects of the most dubious nature, and sometimes the numbers that are spent may not seem all of that large. But I want to tell you how deeply I feel that it adds up. And the way it adds up that is clearest to tell is that we right now owe $13 trillion, $40,000 for every man, woman, and child in our country, and it'll take 300 years to pay it back.
That's right. Thank you.